Assalamu alaikum, you're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rehman live from Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about a very interesting meeting between Chairman Qureshi and Mr. Pompeo. They held a very important talk. Did speak about the bilateral relations between USA and Pakistan, and obviously Afghanistan was the main concentration as far as the issue is concerned. Well, they said that US seeking peace at the moment. This is very important. US seeking peace in Afghanistan, not troop withdrawal. This is what Khalil Saad, the special envoy for this region from the United States of America, said. He also mentioned that the future of Afghan peace process basically is not that simple. There are a lot of complications, a lot of issues. Having said that, they are very, I would say, optimistic that things will be sorted out. It might take some time. But still, the interesting part is that if you want to end this Afghan conflict, you need to understand that certain measures need to be taken. When the Afghan Taliban keep this particular point at the top, that they need to know when the United States of America is going to withdraw from Afghanistan, and they want a particular date. Over here, you hear Khalil Saad saying that currently what they are thinking, or what rather they are seeking, is peace in the region, not the troop withdrawal. So that means that if they are not looking at the troop withdrawal, how are they trying to ensure peace in the region? Because that is the first and foremost important point of the Taliban. Forget about the swapping of the prisoners or other issues regarding that, but this is very, very important, and I think this is going to be the bone of contention if there is a delay in that. Then obviously Pakistan's effort for peace in Afghanistan, that is also very important. Do more mantra in one way or the other has always been there. So this is what we'll be talking about in our today's program, that whatever we thought will be happening by the mid of this year actually is not happening. What about the elections in Afghanistan? Delayed and delayed and delayed. Now, most likely in October, or maybe, you never know. So to talk about this, we have with us in our studio. Let me introduce you to our panelists. We have with us, on my right, is Brigadier retired Salim Kamar Bhatt Saab. He's a senior analyst. Thank you very much, Brigadier Saab. Brigadier Saab is also a writer, a columnist. We also have with us Waqar Bukhari Saab. He's a senior foreign affairs expert. Thank you very much, Bukhari Saab, for taking out your time and being here. And we'll be also joined in by Imran Jan Saab. He's a senior journalist, and he'll be joining us from USA. Thank you very much, Imran Jan Saab, for taking out your time and being a part of our show. Thank you very much once again. But Brigadier Saab, let's start off from this particular statement, sir. Khalil Saad Saab says that United States of America is seeking peace and not troop withdrawal at the moment. So now this is a very interesting statement, because I think the first most important point of the Taliban in order to sit down for the negotiation and at least come up with some sort of a framework is about the troop withdrawal, and they want the time frame. Over here, the gentleman says that forget about the troop withdrawal at the moment. We are seeking peace. Does it make any sense to you, sir?
It does and it doesn't. In your number of programs I have had with you on Afghanistan, and I have written, I think, more than 10 articles, my analysis on what is likely to happen in Afghanistan. And I would always say, at the cost of repetition, that there is a lot of slip between the cup and the lip when we talk about peace coming back to Afghanistan, because the strategic interest of the bigger powers, say Russia, America, China, they are very conflicting, and as long as they are not ready to give spaces to each other, the peace is unlikely to come around. We tend to discuss Afghan peace process only focusing on three main actors, that is USA, Afghanistan government and the Taliban, who are the main actors. In the last 6 rounds that we have seen, starting with December last year and up to May this year, we have seen 6 rounds of talks between America and Taliban representative office in Doha. And they came very close to, in the 6th round, they were about to sign the framework for the peace, agreeing on 2 main parts. One was that US would give the time frame for withdrawal from Afghanistan, and Taliban would give the assurance that they are not going to allow the use of Afghan soil for to be used by any terrorist groups.
Correct, sir.
But where did it end? Where did it get into the stalemate was that Taliban were asked to declare ceasefire, which did not. We had seen certain escalation even during the month of Ramadan, although Taliban announced that they are going to be taking a lot of precaution in order to make sure that the civil casualties don't take place. And I'll also refer to the UN and the cigar report that had very clearly stated that the NATO and allied forces, American forces in Afghanistan have inflicted more casualties than any other year in the first quarter of 2019.
Correct, sir.
So that is where it stands. One, Taliban are not ready to cease fire, and likewise Afghan government or the American government are also not likely to declare the ceasefire, because they are basing the talks on very, very wrong assumptions on the part of the Americans, I would say. This is not only my stance, there are so many other, they would agree with me, that the first assumption that the Americans make is that they think the Afghan Taliban have been thoroughly defeated, they have been weakened, they have been coerced, and now they are forced to sit on the dialogue table. Well, that is a very wrong assumption.
Absolutely, sir.
Had it not been for Pakistan, who actually convinced them to sit on the table, the American had tried all other formats before they agreed to sit in Doha. Everything failed. The Taliban wouldn't budge. The second bigger assumption, the wrong assumption that the American had made, was that Pakistan holds a key for peace in Afghanistan. It doesn't. Pakistan could only bring the horse to the water, but Pakistan is definitely not in a position to force the horse to drink the water. And that is what exactly we have done by bringing the Taliban on the negotiation table. Now it is between Taliban and the American side, Khalilzad and his team, to find out the ways and the means. Now what we are seeing is that Americans are making the third wrong assumption implemented on Pakistan. And what is that? That if we can coerce Pakistan enough, courtesy our former Ambassador Hussain Haqqani, who had given them this lead, that coerce them to the extent that they would budge to any pressure. For example, application of pressure by IMF, FATF, World Bank, stopping all kind of military cooperation, stopping all kind of military assistance, even the payments which were due as per the previous agreement, they have not been made. So this application of maximum coercion on Pakistan and expecting that Pakistan can bring around the magic result as per the aspiration of the United States.
That's an impossible task, sir.
It's a mission impossible. Yeah. Now the third player, you remember I referred in your last program that I had written an article, who is a spoiler in the Afghan peace process. There are two main spoilers, and they are working hand in glove. One is the government, sitting incumbent government of Afghanistan, Ashraf Ghani party, and second are the hand in the glove, that is the Indian side, Ajit Doval and group. So they are trying to raise the bar for the American. Every now and then you would hear they are giving a lot of conditionalities to the Khalilzad camp whenever they are interacting with him. They put new kind of things into the demands that they want Pakistan, China, Taliban, Russia to give to them.
You think, sir, primarily because one important point is popping up in my mind. I mean, let's suppose the US troops, they go back. There is a withdrawal which we witness, say, in the coming months or the end of this year. And interestingly, that also leads to two basic questions. One, is there going to be peace in Afghanistan, or the Taliban will just simply walk over all over Afghanistan? In both the cases, it seems that, the second part seems to be more important. And this is what the concern of the Americans, and even the concern of Pakistanis too. Yes. And on the other hand, it is also believed, I read an article that, most likely the Indians do not want the Americans to leave in any way, because as long as the Americans are there, the Indian influence would remain on the Afghan, as well as, whatever the wrongdoings they're up to in Afghanistan, using their soil against Pakistan or other countries for that matter, that influence is going to be weakened. Now, they want the situation to remain fluid the way it is at the moment, sir. Because if something is happening, then that means that lesser Indian control. And most likely one of the fear they have is that what if the Afghan Taliban turn their face towards the Kashmir side, sir? That is something which they are also bothered. Correct, sir?
Anyway, Kashmir is a different affair, but as far as you said, that as soon as the Americans withdraw from Afghanistan, the same story will be repeated, what happened when Russians withdraw from Afghanistan. So immediately you cannot have peace in Afghanistan, but later on, one of the forces will win. And as I know about Kabul, I have been going there in my childhood and in my youth. Afghanistan is divided, and many such countries, others also like Egypt and other countries, they are divided between elite and the common people. When you go to Kabul or Herat or Kandahar, you see elite. And elite are always very smart in handling power and doing things. And the public, the common people, they can only shout and fight and make problems. They can do it very well, but they cannot run governments. And Taliban had succeeded in running a government. So they have their history. If US leaves, Taliban will run over this Kabul elite. And as stated by my colleague, that we have got three big parties, players in Afghanistan. One are Taliban, one is Kabul elite, and the other is our friend, India. India knows, as he said, India knows that once Kabul elite is not in power, India will not have any influence in Afghanistan. Because Kabul elite has been trained by Indian movies and Indian culture. In Kabul, children call their parents Mata Pita, and they are
All the Indian movies are run in the
yes,
cinemas also, sir.
Yes. So Kabul culture is different. Once this is destroyed, and this will be destroyed, then this Afghanistan will again have the same form of government which they had in with the Taliban. It will be a little modified because Taliban has long experiences and long interaction with international players, but it will be the same thing again. Now we have to see whether America is going to allow this or not. I see a few things there. America was ready to withdraw, and now they are not talking of withdrawal, they are talking about the peace process. Things have changed a little bit in Iran. Americans' problems with Iran is forcing America to keep some bases in Afghanistan also.
Do you think just to keep an eye on the Iranian side, sir?
I think America will not like to remove its air bases from Afghanistan, not only because of Iran, but also because of CPEC. America will not like it. But if it
Then
is
what about
forced,
the promises made by Donald Trump? He, in fact, if you remember General James Mattis, I mean, he was so upset because of this decision taken by the US president that they will withdraw from Syria as well as from Afghanistan.
and he
resigned.
And he is facing resistance there. The American president is facing great resistance within his own
So
people.
you believe that there is a difference in the thinking of the CIA, the Pentagon primarily,
Yes.
and the White House, sir?
It has always been there. You see, and this Trump is a very straightforward person. Like Modi, I said in the last program, they are straightforward people. Now Trump sees that America is completely disturbed. Trump has seen that America has faced many wars like Vietnam and others, and he is now more focused on economy and the benefit of goodness of people. So Trump wants a withdrawal. But the Pentagon and other people, there's a huge lobby. There's a lobby of the military-industrial complex also. They want wars to continue in the world because they have to sell their arms. So they like tensions. So America now has tension, or it has created a tension with Iran to pressurize Saudi Arabia to buy arms from America. This is what America is doing. So in this situation, America wants something in Afghanistan. They are very conveniently placed, American bases in Afghanistan. The other thing is, which America is seriously worried, is about CPEC. And I don't know what can it do, but it is desperate. And for that also, it wants some reserve forces in somewhere in the region. So this is the problem with
So
the
keeping the forces and counting CPEC, how does it make sense, sir?
I don't know.
Because that is purely, an expansion plan. But let me use this adjective that expansion is there, but that's more of a trade expansion, sir.
That's
Business
right.
expansion.
That's
That's what their idea is. But Americans have something else in them.
You see, once they stopped Russia from reaching the Arabian Sea, the Indian Sea or Arabian Sea, and now it will try, America will try its best to stop
The Chinese
China
to
to
get
reach the Arabian Sea, because Arabian Sea is the gateway to Gulf and to South Africa and to
Elsewhere,
to,
elsewhere.
to the South
So
Asia.
primarily that is the reason they are really engaging Indians to counter the Chinese, and also, trying to always create a problem in that particular part so that, they have reasons
They
to
are,
defend.
and what I see, what I foresee is, first of all, America will try to stay here. American Pentagon, I mean, maybe Trump has a different view.
All right.
America wants to stay. Pentagon or these powers would like to stay in this region. The other thing is that once they go away from here, as our foreign minister was talking to Pompeo, expecting that we will have good relations with the United States, let me tell you very clearly that once Americans go from Afghanistan, they will never have good relations with Pakistan. They will have no stakes in Pakistan. They will only try to create disturbance in Pakistan in association with India. So it is not very beneficial for Pakistan for Americans to go away from Afghanistan. This is what I
This is
think.
very interesting. But sir, let me also take the point of view of Ranjal Saab from USA. And Ranjal Saab, a couple of very interesting analysis from our studio. But again, I want your take, I want your comment on this, sir. That on one end, they talk about peace. On the other side, they talk about not withdrawing. Don't you think this is an absolute conflict of interest over here, sir? And if this continues, forget about peace. We are talking about more destruction in Afghanistan, sir. And God knows when the election is going to take place also. Your take, sir.
Yes, so before I answer that, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you, sir. Please go ahead.
Okay, so before I answer that question, I want to mention that there's just one fact that has sort of gone down the Orwellian hole, which is that the fact that when we talk about peace in Afghanistan or achieving peace in Afghanistan, it is all of a sudden somehow wrapped up in stars and stripes. It is all somehow just a made in America concept, which is not true, because right after 9/11, from day one, it was always Pakistan that has always made clear to the Americans that the only way to achieve a solution to what happened in New York and Washington, D.C., was to find a peaceful way of dealing with the situation, not invade the country. So that had been Pakistan's stance from day one. And many, many years later, the United States has finally realized it, which is what happens every time the United States goes to war and stays for more than a decade. Now, as to your question, when you said that's a confusion, that is absolutely a confusion. And because it's two conflicting situations. On one side, you promised the Taliban that we will leave this country, we will withdraw our troops, and for you not to use your territory against the United States, which is what the Taliban has promised. At the same time, actually, the reason this is becoming a confusing thing is because Taliban has from day one demanded two things mainly. One, for the U.S. forces to completely withdraw, and two, that they will not negotiate or sit down to talk with the Afghan regime, which is they call them the puppet regime because they do not have any authority to withdraw the U.S. forces. Now, the way I see it, in my opinion, is that when the U.S. says that we are now focused on peace and somehow the talk about withdrawing forces has disappeared, it may be a bargaining chip. It may be that the Trump administration, or Zalmay Khalilzad to be very specific, is offering the Taliban that, as a sort of like a carrot, that, okay, you want us to withdraw, but you know what, it's so difficult to achieve. And you're also not willing to talk to the Afghan regime, which is what we want you to do. So somehow they're maybe indirectly pressuring the Taliban to sit down to talk to the Afghan regime so that they can call this peace process as Afghan-owned and Afghan-led. And then we will talk about withdrawing the forces from that country. I also want to mention that, as my other colleague said, that President Trump is very much inclined to take the forces out of that country, the U.S. forces, because that is what he promised. he won his election. That was one of his major promises, which helped him win the White House. And the re-election campaign is right around the corner. It's not too far away from now. In a few months, everyone will get into a full-time campaign mode. And Trump actually, a few days ago, announced his election campaign. So he'll be grilled over this promise of his that he promised to withdraw the U.S. forces from Afghanistan. And now there's talk about the Iranian conflict, that there's talk about sending more troops, the U.S. troops, to that region. So it is a confusing thing, absolutely. It makes no sense. It could be a bargaining chip. It could be exactly what the other participants said, that now the U.S. is realizing that they need to have a presence in the region to keep an eye on Iran. But I disagree very politely with one of the arguments made that in order to counter CPEC, the U.S. forces have to be present in the region. And as you pointed out, that's just an infrastructure planning going on. That's not like a war situation. So what I would say in response to that argument is that for the United States to counter CPEC, it makes more sense to be friends with Iran and have a presence, like a peaceful, friendly presence in the Iranian region, because remember, India is already helping sponsor the Chabahar port in Iran. And it would make absolute sense for the United States to support the construction of that port to counter Gwadar and CPEC and all the other infrastructure-related projects that China is involved in its Belt and Road Initiative long-term goal. Again, Trump administration has been confusing from day one. There are people who say, well, he has been very vocal and clear about what is it that he wants, but then we see that he has this tendency to create a crisis and then back off from it. Threaten countries like what we saw with North Korea and Iran. He threatened countries with consequences. He told North Korea that he has a larger button in his office which could trigger a nuclear war. And then he backs off from those threats and makes a peace gesture, basically to, in my view, to claim credit that he averted a crisis, that he is the guy who is different from all the other presidents, that he doesn't want to go to war, and he is only all about America first. So again, we don't know. These could be just the threats that Trump will later, maybe days later, withdraw from, because he has belief in his own cunning. He saw that despite what people are telling him to refrain from using his Twitter account and other such things, he believes that his method works. It was his rhetoric and his method that got him elected in the first place. So again, these are confusing policies, but maybe Trump knows deep in his mind what is it that his next move would be and how he's going to claim credit for whatever he will manipulate in future. So we will see what happens.
I mean, N.S. Wells recently outlined that the administration's priorities for Pakistan before the House of Foreign Affairs Subcommittee for Asia, sir. And I mean, this was also sort of again returned by the Secretary of State, Mr. Pompeo also. Now they want Pakistan to do more, to be more effective for the peace process, do more. Basically, they're asking, but when you're not talking to the Taliban, when you're not even listening to them, and that they are the major stakeholders, the current Afghan government, it's a puppet regime, ready to talk, sometimes not ready to talk to us, under the absolute influence of the Indians. So let's keep Pakistan out then. And Indians, Afghan, and the US should sort it out themselves, which they cannot. That's why they failed miserably, and that is the reason primarily they want Pakistan to engage. But sir, there are so many other regional forces. I mean, whatever US is thinking about Iran, or their future for that matter, they can't even handle that. Afghanistan, it's been almost 20 years, absolute failure. I think this is the longest war which they fought, and I don't know what their objectives were post 9/11, but whatever it was, they are unable to do that. I mean, eliminating Al-Qaeda, good enough. Then now what? Because the Afghan Taliban, they never had a design beyond the borders of Afghanistan, sir. Why to go after them? And then we'll smoke you out and all that. And now there was a report that maybe Osama bin Laden wasn't involved in 9/11. So what I'm saying is that, sir, this half-hearted or having 3, 4, 5 different objectives in your mind and then invading a country and then not understanding what to do now. They are confused primarily, sir. I mean, I think their objectives are either changing with the passing time or they have something else brewing in their mind. it seems that they are not at all interested in bringing in peace in Afghanistan. So that's a fact. To me, at least, it seems that. Otherwise, sir, all it takes is like a couple of meetings and that's it. Wherever they want to sort out the issue, whether you talk about the extreme east of Indonesia or you talk about North Sudan and South Sudan, that's been taken care like this. But over here, there seems to be a problem.
Faisal, interestingly, there is a school of thought that strongly believes in what you're saying. Partially, I'm also there. People believe there is a plan in the madness that U.S. government tries to demonstrate to the world. For example, Bukhari Sahab also highlighted, and John also pointed out, that there is certainly there is a difference in the White House and the Department of Defense, Pentagon and Langley. When Trump announced last year that he is going to fulfill his last promise of disengaging from the endless wars and bring his troops back home and save money in order to spend more money back home. So that was a political objective that he wanted to commit. Yesterday, Trump announced commencement of his election campaign. So there would be a lot of pressure on his representative Khalil Zad to bring around some solution, and that actually explains more pressure on Pakistan or reaching out to Pakistan by Mr. Pompeo, talking to Foreign Minister Qureshi. But at the same time, look at the statement given by Pompeo. Just before his visit to India, what he says that we rely a lot on India as a strategic partner, and we would wish India to take care of Pakistan and China. These are the two problems that we have. That is in the regional or the domestic and the closer home scenario, I would say. But at the bigger level, at the global level, China as an emerging economic competitor and Russia staying as number one military competitor is a problem that United States administration, the Pentagon, the White House, everybody looks at. And that is where his generals tend to differ with Mr. Trump. And they can't bluntly say no to him in any way, but they could always insert certain delaying tactics that would make it sure that come what may, Trump promises they are not much pushed, but what they are pushed about is that their strategic objective that was built in the invasion of Afghanistan, they stay intact. Now, what has given to the Americans the invasion of Afghanistan? That helped them to pulverize Iraq, that has helped them to decimate Libya, Syria, Sudan, name any country, you know, on the horizon.
That particular corner of...
It's from the Sahel, from North Africa to Middle East. Now the war clouds are hovering over Gulf in the Middle East. Iran appears to be the new target. But
you
who
think,
knows?
sir, because of the Iran situation, they are just lingering this stay on, sir?
No, I would explain it in a bigger context.
Okay.
It's not merely Iran. Whether they come for Iran or not, previously they tried this military invasion of Iran in 2009. But Russia put their foot down and made sure that they don't do that. Again, the same phenomenon is happening when the war clouds were happening. SCO summit is just concluded 2 days ago in Bishkek.
Yes.
And the SCO has a security arm, they have a diplomatic political arm, and they have the economic arm. So I think they have very categorically conveyed the message to the United States that the whole region stands united if they come for any member or observer country of the SCO or CSTO. Same was happened in, I think same happened in 2009 when they wanted to invade, using Afghanistan as a base, they wanted to invade Iran. The summit of CSTO was held even as a member, not a member state, but an observer state in Tehran, and it fizzled out. The same things are likely to happen now. But the strategic competition that is in the calculus of the US administration tells them that they have to linger on in Afghanistan. Though Trump wants that they should withdraw under the political expediency in order to save money, blah, 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 but the Pentagon and DOD is not agreeing to that. I will refer to the CENTCOM commander, General McKenzie, who is the new CENTCOM commander, Frank McKenzie. Yesterday, I think he stated that Daesh or Islamic State is getting a lot of foothold in Afghanistan.
Oh, yes, indeed, sir.
Previously, they were trying to unfold their template on Pakistan. The Daesh is shifting to Pakistan. It didn't work. We contested it very strongly.
And who is supporting
right?
Daesh, by the way, sir?
And now
American
back to
presence is there.
Afghanistan.
I mean, who's supporting them?
Daesh is there.
It's the American.
So what is Daesh doing? Daesh is attacking Taliban. Daesh is attacking American bases as per American they own say. But what do the Taliban say? They say that Daesh is an excuse made to make sure that US can
Stay for
on the
a longer
negotiate
time.
table, they can linger on in Afghanistan
Absolutely.
and justify the new narrative they have recently inserted, which they're going to discuss in the first week of July with them, if the 7th round takes place. And what is that? That okay, we will agree, we'll give you the time frame for the withdrawal, but then we will have to keep a counter-insurgency force, counter-terrorism force in Afghanistan, the American counter-terrorism force in Afghanistan,
And
in
what
order
about
to
the
make sure
contractors they want to
that-
have there?
Right. Now, I have said it umpteen time that one of the strategic strands of the competition is the domination of the lines of communication. When it comes to manifestation about the sea lines of communication, there is a concept, Chinese call it string of pearls. They have got about 9
Different
ports
areas, yeah.
in different areas in South China Sea and Asia Pacific. America has already historically since Second World War, they got Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Japan, Korea, all these ports are already with them. But China is very quick in establishing. Why is Sri Lanka been targeted? Because
Just
Hambantota
because of
port was
military,
handed
yeah.
over to China.
They have their base, yes.
Right. So, why is Pakistan being targeted? Gwadar becoming part of CPAC, and this links the sea lines of communication with the ground lines of communication which pass through Afghanistan, through Central Asia, link Eurasia, and rest. You know, there are about 62 countries which are part of China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, expanded into BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, involving what? 1 trillion Chinese dollars, American dollars invested by China. So this is a strategic competition. So in order to make sure that they keep their leverage on the domination of the sea as well as the ground line of communication, they got to have their bases in Afghanistan in order to make sure that they continue to make sure that their own supplies, that their own flow of energy is never ever threatened, but at the same time they can also threaten
And
the
the
line of
strategic
communication.
positioning, sir, of the Americans, I mean, that is also something very important to look at. I mean, the history tells us, sir, wherever they have gone, they have stayed. Whether you talk about Middle East or you talk about Scandinavia, Germany, Japan, all the way down Korea, Australia, New Zealand, Far East, Diego Garcia, I mean, you name it and they've been there.
Less Vietnam and Cambodia.
Yeah, but we all know
And that is what we must discuss. It has a lot of relevance.
it
with
has a lot of
Afghanistan.
history, sir. So the point is that Americans, they always looked upon them as global power, and which they are, and the presence they have and the kind of military might that they enjoy, sir. So that's a reality. But sir, having said that, when you look at SEO, that was a very important point raised, and I'm sure this was also discussed, that all these SEO countries, I'm not sure about the Indian version, but over here, sir, the Russians, the Chinese, Pakistanis, the Central Asian states, most of these observer states, they must have had a very unanimous sort of an approach on this, that we want them to leave this area, because their presence doesn't mean peace, their presence means disturbance and chaos for the region. This is what we have witnessed. We had no concept of suicidal bombing in Pakistan until the Americans came here. Drones attacking Pakistan, killing innocent people, sir. And then the Americans claiming, well, they have earned some sort of a victory. No, sir. It's a different ball game. A lot of minds are working together to be in this region for some odd reason, sir, I'm sure. Your take, sir. Do you think the regional players are strong enough to sort of persuade them, not because Americans will never get persuaded, sort of put them in a position where they have to leave?
First of all, we should decide who wants peace in Afghanistan.
So Pakistan number one.
Number one.
And
okay.
Afghan people number two or number one, I would say.
Okay. What about others?
Depends on
India
the
doesn't
kind
want.
of,
India doesn't want. What do you think about Russia? I mean, Talibans are a movement. It came as a movement. If they had succeeded in Afghanistan, they would have extended their influence in the Central Asian countries, because they are Muslims, they were oppressed by Russia, and there are people in those Central Asian countries who would join hands with Taliban and start their movements there. Chechnya, So Russia was also
And
happy.
who was supporting Chechnyan rebels, we all know.
Yes.
I don't want to take the name of those so-called brotherly countries, but that's a reality, sir.
Yes. Now, when America invaded, you talked about 9/11. I have read books on 9/11. This was a hoax. Nobody did it. They did it themselves.
Maybe they
It is
used
obvious.
these
It is
Muslims and all.
obvious. Yes, they
They
do
These
it.
were all pawns, basically.
Yes, it's a chess game, and people do it.
Absolutely.
And they know how to do it. I mean,
How they use the media
the front
and the
man,
influence. And
the
they-
front
they-
man
in
may
fact,
be a,
this was the new world order, sir, for this century.
the front man may be a Muslim, a die-hard Muslim, but who is
He'll do
doing
it.
things.
He'll do it. Yes.
So then when they invaded Afghanistan, Russia was happy.
They knew they'll get engaged there.
Russia was happy because not only that they were engaged there, but also because they were curtailing and containing Taliban's there. Because Taliban were very clear about their thinking. They were absolutely clear. I have been in touch with them when I was teaching in Peshawar University. They were very clear in their thinking. You remember when Mullah Omar was requested by Pakistan again and again to hand over this Osama bin Laden, how strong he was. I mean, he said, okay, do whatever you like, but he's our guest. So this is how they are.
But sir, there was another approach by Mullah Muhammad Umar that he said, even if I hand over, they'll still kill me. And they'll kill, my own people will kill me if I hand over.
Yes, yes.
You know, that was the basic fear.
Because it's not Mullah Omar.
Yeah.
It's a movement.
It's a concept of...
It's
yeah.
a movement. So, Russia was happy. Now, when America is not happy because they are spending money in Afghanistan, other people have not much concern whether United States goes away or remains there. This is what I think. Pakistan, yes, but not others. India, you know, as he said. So this is one thing. The other thing is that the Pentagon and those people, they are resisting it, as I said. So this will, I think this will linger on. And
A quick comment, sir. What about the election in Afghanistan? Do you see election in the coming months or no?
I don't find the possibility.
Okay.
I don't find the possibility. He would like to have elections and re-elected Ashraf Ghani. He is now coming to Pakistan. He must be trying something. But as said by my friend Bhatt Saab, that Pakistan can only bring the horse to water, but it cannot make.
You can't force the horse to drink water, sir. That's for sure.
This is what the game is going on, and this is a chess game. Now, this is not simple. This is not simple. The American own politics within America, the military-industrial complex, which needs wars to go on everywhere in the world, because somebody told us that they make one bomb, something in 12 minutes, and they want one bomb to be thrown in 12 minutes somewhere in the world. So, and that is a big lobby which supports the American president to win
Obviously,
elections.
sir. All right, that's for sure, sir. So, quick roundup by our friend Imran Saab in USA. Now, so the question, Imran bhai, is that now US initiated the peace talks with the Taliban since 6th round of talks, Doha, elsewhere. Talk about China, you talk about Pakistan, Murray, in fact. Now, it seems that apparently the Americans and the Taliban, they have reached a dead end, sir. If that is the case, there was no point in holding talks. Well, good, bad or ugly, that's a different chapter. But it seems that nothing productive so far has happened, sir. And it seems that this is going to continue. Now they have some other designs in their mind, or maybe even they had them earlier as well. But now they're pretty visible. Do you see peace in Afghanistan? And peace means election in Afghanistan. Election means a new government or the previous government or whatever. And then moving in the right direction, sir? Or you think that the current fluid situation in Afghanistan is going to remain the same?
I think when we talk about peace returning to Afghanistan, I think it would be difficult to achieve in the short term, even if elections do happen. Even if elections are allowed to happen, and let's say there's an arrangement between whoever happens to be governing at the time after the election, and the Taliban, if they're given some, some ability to be in the government, to become a mainstream party, there would always be that conflict. Exactly what we witnessed after the Soviet Union left Afghanistan, and all the Mujahideen leaders who fought together somehow started fighting against each other as local warlords and controlling their territory, just like drug warlords. But I also want to say that if we are here to argue that the United States basically is now not talking about withdrawing U.S. forces, and that it never was their intention when they initiated these peace talks with the Taliban in Doha, creating an office for Zalmay Khalilzad and sending him in to indulge in talks. It's a little too much to digest. And again, Faisal, if you have read my articles, you know that I criticize the U.S. foreign policy all the time. But at the same time, I myself, in my humble view, I find it a little hard to believe that that probably was never the intention of the Trump administration when they started the talks with the Taliban regime. And I also want to comment on what was discussed earlier about the fact that actually 9/11 was done by the United States itself just to come to Afghanistan and have a presence and, control the region. There is no doubt that the great power competition around the world is the biggest threat that the U.S. sees to its survival and to its hegemony powers compared to terrorism. Terrorism was always understood to be a short-term threat. And recently, there are arguments inside Pentagon and in the U.S. government bureaucracy that it is actually the great power competition between Russia, China, and the U.S. that is the major threat that the U.S. is facing. But at the same time, I would argue that it's just a little difficult to agree that, we know how many countries the U.S. invaded, not just Afghanistan or Iraq. There were little small mini invasions like, if you will, like in Syria and Libya and other such countries. So for invading every country, should the U.S. be bringing down some building in New York or Chicago? I don't think that's true. I don't think, in my humble view, and as what facts we have available, and some of the leading scholars like Noam Chomsky and others that we read who have some credibility, and other investigative journalists like Jeremy Scahill, Glenn Greenwald, we see that it is not the United States that did that, but of course it was exploited by them a lot, especially Vice President Dick Cheney, who was back then the Vice President when 9/11 happened, started this movement inside the White House to basically control the world, and that was such a great opportunity that 9/11.
Afghanistan is going to remain as the battleground for China, Russia, and the Americans, or Indians for that matter, and in order to obtain, get hold of all their objectives as well, sir.
And that is exactly what I'm saying, that is why the U.S. came over here, because again, and I want to remind this is one of those other facts that doesn't get discussed. When the U.S. was invading Afghanistan right after 9/11, it basically sent a message to the Taliban regime at the time, Mullah Umar, saying, hand over bin Laden to us because he did 9/11. Mullah Umar said, and which was a very reasonable demand, he said, show us the proof that he did this, and we will hand him over to you. The Pashtun Wali Code that allows us to take care of our guests also allows us to hand him over if he committed some crime against you while in our custody. The Bush administration basically said, well, how come you asked for my proof? And he sent a message to the Afghan people, your government refuses to hand over that man to us, that is why we're coming to bomb you. Now notice that is a textbook illustration of terrorism, and that is what the U.S. did. And so if we have to look at the crime or the wrongdoing of the United States government during that invasion, it is exactly that.
All right.
That the war aim was changed overnight. One time it said, well, we are coming, hand over bin Laden to us, and then overnight it changed to, we are coming after you, Taliban, because you're refusing. That's a change in war aim. That's the war crime in itself.
They had some other agenda. They had something else in their mind. 9/11 was a drama, basically. Just created. This was the new world order, basically. How to rule, how to govern, how to be there. They wanted to be here. It's been almost 1/5 of this current century has passed, but still they are there. Obviously, they have some objectives in their mind. They knew about CPEC. They knew about the Chinese expansion. They knew about their hegemonic design, if the Americans think that way. And obviously, things are very simple. But anyway, sir, thank you very much, Imran Saab. It was a pleasure talking to you, sir. Thank you very much, Press Saab, and thank you very much, Press Saab, for your presence in our show. And that's all we have for this hour. I'll see you again. Till then, you take good care. Assalamu alaikum and Khuda Hafiz.